Spotlight sessions. In these sessions, we showcase top leaders in the world of marketing and sales. Today, I'm joined by Ray Brehm, Chief Pubpreneur and founder of Pubfunnels. It's the premier business hub for authors to go from creation of their book to monetization of their book. Uh, Ray is a USA Today, Wall Street best-selling author, and I must include in 2023, he earned his SaaSpreneur High Level Gold Award. There we go. It's amazing.
It's portable.
It's portable. And the great news here is that, Ray and I have really put our heads together on how we can give to the high level community, whether they're new users or advanced users, some extra value on positioning themselves. So we put together an episode, and the episode is called Why the Future for Authors is Selling Direct. And although this is a big and bold headline, we put together some bullet points to really get to the meat and potatoes. And those 3 bullet points that we're going to cover are the following. 1, the present and the future of monetization of your book, whether you are a new publisher, a new author, or publishing multiple books. The second is own your audience, owning your audience. And last is doing exactly what you enjoy doing. Ray, it's great to have you here. I know you put a lot of time and energy into this, and we want to get this up and running here so that way our audience can really start to deep dive on how they can monetize their books. For those in our audience that may not know you yet, could you share a little bit about your journey and how you got into being a pubpreneur and serving the publishing community?
Well, thanks, John. I can go back 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. I'll just say this. I'd wanted to write a book forever. I had folders, manila folders, if you still have those, full of sticky notes and ideas and all these things, and just never got around to it. The self-publishing world came about, and the tools and the different platforms that allow us to do that. And I jumped in, and for me, it was like, there was a dream. All of my heroes had books. And so I wanted to have a book, and I did that. And back in 2015, I joined an anthology to be part of so that's where multiple people write chapters of a book and publish it together. And that was my first book. And when I joined that, I said, I can do that myself. It gave me the confidence to get started. So in fact, we do that a few times a year. We have anthologies where people will join and get a chapter and just to get their feet wet and do that kind of thing. So, because I know it gives you so much confidence, but that my first solo book, I worked about 10 months on it, and it was about writing books because I decided, I saw how that first one launched. I can do that. I can learn that. I can teach people that are, a step or two behind me how to do that. And I was pumped. It was December 25th. We were visiting my parents' house. My wife was in the shower. I took my laptop in there and said, check this out. Bestseller. I had, my book hit bestseller. I'd done everything right. I wrote the book, done everything right. And I'm like, we are set. And now a couple weeks later, I'm like, let me just go check the royalties and see how much we're going to make and how many more books I need to get to my, whatever that number is. Let's say I want 20,000 a month, 10,000 a month. And so I'm like, okay, let's go check. If it's 2,000, I only need to rewrite 5 books to get to that 10K. And I went and looked, and I'm like, And I stepped back. And I said, let me do the math. If these 2-week period holds up, this is 2 weeks after I hit bestseller on Amazon, because I'm thinking I'm gold, passive income, no more jobs, nothing. And when I did the math, it was like, I'm going to make $20 a month from this thing ongoing. Now it peaked, got bestseller, but I don't know what the number is these days. It's like 60 million books on Amazon or something ridiculous, right? And I'm like, I went from I'm a best-selling author to this isn't going to do it. And within 2 weeks, and it was just like one of those, for us entrepreneurs, when you get that pit in your stomach, like this isn't going to work. This is making me sick. What can I do about it? And so from that point on, after I wallowed in misery for a few days, I'm like, well, there's obviously people that have a book and they've got their own business and they live off of it. How am I going to do what they do? And that set me on a path where in fact, I hosted my very first summit on it, called the Book Profit School Summit. And the idea was, what happens afterwards? Because royalties aren't going to do it. And so that moment kind of changed how I looked at things. And that's when I started following the path of, okay, let's help authors monetize their books in multiple ways. And, you know, you mentioned it in the intro. One of the first things is some of these platforms, and you know, there's a few, and there's one major one, but they're not designed with for you to really succeed. I mean, it's not nothing malicious. It's just the nature of it. So, for instance, I give this example. If you, let's say, John, you came out with like this amazing silverware, best silverware on earth. If you took it to and sold it at Walmart, do you think you would be successful? No, because the people shopping at Walmart are seeing all the prices there, and Walmart's going to take their cut and whatever they do, and they're going to push your price down and all that kind of stuff. And you're sitting next to all this other silverware, you might not sell any because they're like, well, I'm here to get the cheapest version, or if I want the best silverware, I'm not going to shop at Walmart. I'm going to go to some specialty chef store, right? Same with your book. It doesn't matter how great your book is. If you're sitting it next to every other book that's 99 cents and Amazon's going to give you 30 cents on the dollar in royalties. And if you do the math, now, so I did the math one time, and I'm like, well, let's just prove it to myself that I'm thinking right where I need to move this other direction to direct sales. And I did the math. And I said, okay, if I want to make $10,000 a month on a 99-cent book that I get 30 cents of, the number was, I've got to sell like 28,000 books plus a month. That's not
Wow.
going to happen. You know, and you start scaling it back. It's like, if I just had a $500 course, I just got to sell 20 of those, right? So you start doing just some simple, I call it, I call it this number one self-publishing provider math. And
Back of the napkin math,
right,
right?
yeah, it was like, well, it doesn't even make sense. You can't do if you sell 10,000 a month, you should hit the New York Times bestseller list. So there's very few of those. You're not going to do 28,000, let alone with any consistency. So you step back and do the math. And then I said, okay, but what about guys like Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson? So I went out, and you can calculate, there's what's called a bestseller rank on these platforms, and you can calculate how many books they sell. There's some tools out there, some free tools online. You can check it. And I looked and said, but these guys got to be making money. And for instance, and it varies every day, but Jack Canfield, I looked at like his number one book, The Success Principles, and he was averaging, in my estimation, between 200 and 200 and let's say 600 a month on his book. Now, he's not living his lifestyle on that. It's so I stepping back and saying, yeah, you want to have it there for authority.
Yes.
And you want to have it everywhere you can for it to build the authority, but that's not one. Your book is not your breadwinner. He's got all kinds of courses and programs and certifications. Same Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson. He's got this, his amazing books on Amazon. But if you look at his rank, he's not making a ton from that. Everybody just assumes they're like, it's this person, it's Tony Robbins. That's not where they're making their money. They make a heck of a lot. Now, if you wanted to just make money on your book and do nothing else, you start selling direct, and it completely changes the game. You can do the math yourself. But if you say, like, I've got, we were talking earlier, but I got this book, Profit Secrets book. I could sell this for 99 cents, the Kindle version, maybe $9.99 or $15 the paperback. But if I can sell this direct, I get 100% of the royalties, less the print on demand costs. And I can also sell the companion course to it right away at some ridiculously lower, the
Mm.
$500 course, I could say, hey, but you can get it right now for $50, get the course with it. Cost me nothing else to deliver a digital course. And I've just exponentially changed the game
It's how you
on that.
package it.
Yeah.
And what
So
I'm
it's
getting from that is
packaging.
how you package it, because
Right.
we're,
So you,
you know, let's go a little bit into the past of how books were sold, right? Like, you know, let's take a little bit of the past to bringing it to now, present day. Where was the shift from looking at the list of books on, the New York Times New York Times, newspaper or online, to now you're looking on forums and social media? How did they make it happen then without what we have now?
I mean, I can recall back in the days, like you would look at the USA Today book section and they got the top books. And you're like, that one seems interesting, but you
Yeah.
had 10 to 50, let's say, to look at. And when you start putting them all, and I were talking a little bit offline about this. I call it end cap publishing. And that's
Hmm.
what we're moving to from a direct sales point of view. If you're walking down the bookstore, say, and you're looking at, and this is the same digitally, right? If you're on,
Hmm.
Amazon or Barnes and Noble, there's just, that's the other part that's not, you don't think about, is like, if someone comes to your site, they're only seeing your book. They're not getting distracted by these other things. And, oh,
Mm.
other people bought this and this is comparable and this one. And you're like, well, okay, this one's, it's a little cheaper. I'll go with that one. No, there's
Yes.
no comparison when it's either, do you want it or not? But with an end cap, what we're talking about, when you put it on your own site, it's like, hey, there's not a bunch of books here. There's this book and it's right here. Here's all the
Hmm.
reasons. Here's other stuff. I can modify the page and so forth. So even if you just said, well, I don't want to do anything else except sell my book, you can still exponentially make the royalties that much higher because you're getting 100%, right? So if I'm selling, if let's say I'm selling this hardcover for $30 on my site, well, I'll be lucky after print costs and everything else. If I was selling it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or one of these other platforms, they've got the print costs, they get their cut. uh I'm lucky to get
It's a loss
20,
leader
10
at
to
the very
20%.
least.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can't create the funnel and sell other things. You've got the distractions, you've got the competition.
Hmm.
And if you're paying for ads, you're basically paying to get Amazon customers or Barnes
Yeah.
and Noble customers or whoever. If you're doing that and you send them to your site, even if they don't buy, they might go grab your opt-in or something else. You've got them now in your audience permanently. And a lot of times people, they'll wait to buy things till they know you a little better.
So if I'm listening to this as a new listener who does not have a book, I say I do not have a book, and I'm interested because I've seen some articles, I've seen some things around authority that, creating a book, and there's kits and there's services out there that offer you to do that. Let's say I got that part done before meeting you, right? And now I just want help promoting my book. If I'm listening to this correctly, it's create an experience where someone goes to your site, where if they search your name, they find your own properties outside of social media, so that way they can understand you as a person as a whole. And then when they're on your site, you're giving them other bonuses that they could explore and maybe package the book with. So when you are doing paid traffic, you're not driving them to a random shopping cart style website. You're driving them to your domain brand name, to your mission, to your story. And if they resonate, they might resonate by, like you said, opting into an offer of some sort, or signing up for a free course, or just buying the book and everything on the shelf. Am I understanding that correctly? If I'm looking to really brand my business with a book to use at trade shows, at events, to do local book signings, to attach it to a nonprofit.
Exactly. And also, one of the things that holds people back is they say, well, what if they want the paperback or the hardback? Well, the technology is there now where you can get a free account at Lulu or Book
Wherever.
Vault,
Yeah.
yeah, anywhere, and they will fulfill it for you. They're not taking royalties. We've,
Mm.
that's what my focus has been, is to build that into Pubfunnels, like, so that somebody buys from your site and you just send a call out to your personal, account at one of these providers, and that they print it and ship it, right? And you of course
Hmm.
set the you set the price in the front end. You know what the cost's going to be, uh, and then what's interesting about that is it's obviously going to change the whole revenue situation to your benefit, but it also creates this authority, like, wow, they're big enough to have their own fulfillment of their book. So you're going to see, a gazillion people have whatever their shop or their whatever somewhere, and it's like, well, yeah, I know I could set that up. You set and this doesn't take much more effort than that, but it's from your site, and now people are like, oh, and I know I even do that. It's like, if they sell their book on their site, whether it's free plus shipping or it's charged, whatever it is, the status went up for me for that
Whether
person.
it's buying the upsells, they're buying a
Yep.
T-shirt, maybe subscribing to the podcast,
Just even
exploring
being
the
able to
YouTube
fulfill their own
channel.
book, which is pretty simple on the back end, but most people won't do it. Won't take, it's too scary. You start doing that, and it's like, you don't even need them to go get distracted on social media or on these platforms that have 60 million books on them.
So let's do this now. That was a scenario. If I've never written a book, you've basically given us the inspiration, but also like, look, you've been doing this for years, right? So you've been there, done that. It's possible. We know it's possible with the internet, the resources, and connecting with someone like yourself. Let's say now I'm a previous author. I've published maybe two books. They've they haven't gone anywhere, right? Because I was expecting to maybe get sponsored or a deal, and that didn't work out. So then I put it online, and that's just been not working out because I'm doing other things. And now I come across this episode, and you're telling me that I can take my book and treat it like how a supermarket does with an end cap or a retail store does with an end cap, and pretty much spotlight my own book and build my own authority. But I already have 2 to 5 books on the market and they're not going anywhere. Is it too late? Did I miss the bus?
No, it's never too late. And we've worked with people in the past, and I don't do a lot of like book launches anymore, but it's, hey, you're launching your book or you're relaunching your book. Because I think it's almost like if you're writing an email. I've struggled with this to this day. It's like, well, I just talked about this 6 months ago. Well, most people didn't read it or weren't on your list then. It's the same with books. Like, the chance that somebody saw it and mentally decided, I don't want this book, is minuscule. It's You're just reintroducing people to it. Now, let's say you've got a book. Let's say you've even used a publisher, and you're like, look, I can't sell it direct. I can't do that kind of stuff. You can still do what I call an amazing funnel, and that is, you send them to your link. You can run ads, and then I run ads in the past, and I've just experimented with it, but I'm mostly private audience now. My own email list is run ads to your page, and you could say, hey, if you go buy my book on one of these other platforms that you're used to, and you've got the free shipping and all that on that platform, bring the order number back. Step 2, plug it in here with your email address, and I'm going to give you this course. And just by doing that, and I've done this with, but just by doing that, you're getting the email, you're getting the sales credit on this other platform if you want. It's still more lucrative if you've got the ability to fulfill it yourself or sell the digital version on your site, right? But just doing that also, we used to do, we do it just for private clients, but we would guarantee people the bestseller status on Amazon. And I've had these list of places I would run ads, and we'd do some massive ad runs to get and the past 2.5, 3 years, I didn't have to do that anymore. I would just send an email to my audience and say, hey, if you go buy this friend of mine's book, I'll give you this free course.
Mhm.
And we were hitting best. And I do that also for our anthologies we do. And we would hit bestseller because if you've got the numbers, you can do that. Well, you could get the numbers by getting that email in the first place.
So
So
many
even
creative ways. So many
it's
creative
crazy.
ways. Yeah, creativity is why majority of people go into authorship, right? They want to share their story. They're creative writers, they're creative, thoughts. And we lose the creativity when it comes to the business part of authorship. It's like, oh, I got to sell myself in the book now. Like I spend so much time putting this beautiful masterpiece together. People should be buying it. Why is the algorithm working against me?
You remember the movie uh what's the one where they're doing the cattle drive to City Slickers? You remember that? And they have to give birth to this calf, and the Mitch is the character. He pulls a calf out. He's got the goop all over him, and he's like, "This was not in the brochure." That's how I felt. I mean, and that's what I feel like authors feel when they're like, "Got the book done. I'm all set. Financially independent." It's like, nope. You got to learn marketing, copywriting, publishing. How to vet an editor, all these kind of things, sales, and they're like, "Yuck, I don't want to do that." And the beautiful thing is you don't, I mean, if you set up what we call an end cap, so your own page for direct selling, it's a one-time description and it doesn't have to be salesy, right? The other thing that, for me is I've tried, I what I call a near daily, I send near daily email because some days I just don't have it planned or whatever. But I'm constantly just writing emails every day. But what happened at a certain point, 3 or 4 years ago, was I was just like, the heck with it. I'm just writing what I like to do, which is entertain.
Yes.
Because most authors feel this way too. It's like, well, if I'm sending emails, I got to be sell, 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 and they either don't like it, and that doesn't even work anyway,
It
right? If
doesn't.
it's like, and I say this, if the book, if you try to use your book as a solely as a tool for profits, that's not going to work out. This is the tool to educate, get people to know you, build your authority.
Mhm.
We can make it profit if you sell it on the end cap, but that's the role of it. Really is to support your authority, educate people, get them to the next step. I want more help from this guy. The
It's that
same with like,
organic storytelling
yeah,
is what I'm getting as a listener here. And it's so powerful because that's what a lot of people want to do. The business, like you said, it's like a knot in the stomach. They didn't tell me this. So, as we get into, we got both avatars, the newbie that wants to get into it, the experienced, previous written publisher, author. Let's talk about audience, right? Because, we're in the social media age. There's so many different ones, so many new ones popping out. We have RSS feeds, we have websites, we have interactive videos, we have everything. But none of these platforms make it easy to just get leads or relationships, even if you pay for them. How does an author, either or of a side of the cycle, whether they're new or they're experienced, how do you start to build your list and really own your audience without burning your pockets?
yeah.
Like
So
I know
I've
you got to
I've
make
I've
money. I know you got to invest to make money, right? I get that, but like I don't. We don't want a shortcut. I don't want to confuse the audience here that I'm looking for, like the red pill or the blue pill here. I'm looking for like a strategic way that we can build upon a foundation.
I can tell you my way, and it costs nothing but time, and it's still the only one to use now. Back in 2018, I had a brick and mortar business, sold it, put about 150K in my pocket, thought that'll last for whatever, a year or so. That I burned through in a year and a half, I burned through all that cash because I had expensive coach who told me to get expensive Facebook ads agency that
Mm,
told me that I had to spend a minimum amount on Facebook ads. And I was still at the time, I think looking back, it's like, well, I'm still trying to figure out what I was trying to do and sell, burn through all that cash. And it was
mm.
so early 2020. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to have to like not pay the mortgage this month
Oh my gosh.
for all this. Cause we didn't, I had assets and some assets, but it was like the cash was gone. And I had given up my business that was an income producing business, put the cash in my pocket, and then blew it on this. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. You can't, some people can. For me, I couldn't force it that way. I just happened to spend some of our we could have gone an extra month on the mortgage, but I spent a couple $1,000s on a course on how to run virtual summits.
Okay.
And in fact, I mentioned it earlier. My very first summit was like, okay, but I need to figure out how everybody's making money on the back end of their books. And so I ran that first summit. It's called Book Profit School. This book is based on a lot of the information I got in the summit book, Profit Secrets. But as the host, I wasn't necessarily the expert. I just wanted to know. So I would get people, I'd do interviews like this, and I'd say, and I recorded them, hosted this virtual summit. And at the time, I'm like, man, honestly, I'm going to have to create a resume. I haven't done that in 20 years. I got to figure all this out. And that first summit came in, and we made like $12,000 the week of the summit. And then I said, whoa, I feel like I've got some authority here. Let's sell my $1,000 anthology chapters. And we made another $19,000. And all of a sudden, I went from like penny pinching to like $31,000 in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, this is the thing that authors think their book's going to do, but it really does, because all of a sudden I had all these joint venture partners. I added about 3,000 people to my email list from the one summit. We made that chunk of change. I went back and measured a year later, the people that I interviewed, my top 5 affiliates from that summit, we did another like $220,000 in revenue, joint venture promotions and sales. And part of it was I created a high ticket from that. But the point was, oh my gosh, this is an actual business vehicle, revenue generator. The book plays its role, but there's other things that you can piece on the back of your book. And that's why we say, like, we were talking about the funnel earlier, and here's the book and you get the course if you want to upgrade to
The
that.
packaging.
Packaging.
So the summit saved your behind is what I'm getting.
I'd have a job right now if I hadn't run that summit. And I was going on interviews with like heartbroken, where and then the interview would start and I'd be like, yeah, let's go. Tell me about your book and what you do on the back end, all that stuff. And I'd get off and I'd be like, and then the summit ran. And then we were, and if you know the timeline, right, it was like the summit ran at the beginning of April. That was the pandemic. And we were sitting home, and all of a sudden I'm like, what's that? Sale. Like, I just kind of thought summits are the same as books. They build your authority. Maybe you make some connections. That's not the thing. And then I'm like, wait a second, I've actually created a product here. And we were getting sales. And I would walk in the kitchen smirking, and my wife's like, we made another sale. I'm like, yep. I'm like, oh, mama, we were making, like, based on those numbers, it was, I don't know, it was close to $500 to $750 a day during the summit, because we would sell, and the summit was free, but if you want to keep lifetime access, you pay $67 for the things. And I'm like, this can't be right. So I got on my calc, and I was a math major, but I'm looking at this can't be right. And I say 67. When we passed $10,000, I'm like, oh my gosh, 150 premium passes times 67, $10,000. We hit 12,126. And that's when I put 2 and 2 together too, with this book math, right? So it's like, imagine if you're trying to sell a $67 product or a 99-cent book. It's just as much effort into both, but probably more because of the competition, everything else. When you're hosting a summit and you're doing interviews like this, at the end of the summit, everyone's like, well, what was the common denominator of all that good information? Well, it was Ray. He was on every interview. He knows what he's doing. All of a sudden, I'm the book profit guy, and I was just asking people questions how they're making money.
Right, because you've been there, done that. So now, like, you didn't see your authority, but you put a stage up that people got to see what you didn't quite see, because you just were too humble with it.
It was the same, and we do these anthology books, right? So I had done a few of these, and they were like $500 a chapter, but you would guarantee bestseller. And I knew I'd get bestseller. I was doing that before I even sold that other business. I had stopped doing it, whatever. Right before the summit, we were hurting for money. I said, I'm just going to start doing these again. And I did it for $1,000. And the first one was called the Success Code. And about a month before the summit, I ran like a 5 email campaign to my list. And I sold 3. And I'm like, that's, okay, we can buy groceries, right?
Wow. It was like that, Ray.
Right. It was hard. And so the summit ends. And I'm like, we just did 12,126. It's Monday morning. The summit ended Sunday night. And I'm like, it really feels like I should offer something. Because I didn't know, like the way we put together summits now is what's your offer going to be? Then we'll design the summit. But at the time, I didn't know anything. I'm just like, kind of feels like I got some authority here. I could promote this guy's thing that's $300 and I'll get 150 of it. And, I could do that. And I'm like, I just feel like, even though I just did this, I feel like I should sell my highest priced thing, which at the time was $1,000. And it was this anthology. And I said, I don't know, though. I just promoted this a month ago. We were just talking about this a second ago. It's like,
Yes.
You feel like everybody's already seen it. Well, I had we added about 3,000 email addresses. So I just said, you know what? I'm just going to sell this again. I didn't change any of the emails. I ran a 5-day emails Monday through Friday that week. I said, hey, we're opening this up for chapters, right? And you'll be guaranteed bestseller, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, I started walking in the kitchen again to my wife, and I got this smirk on my face. She's like, you sold another one? I'm like, yeah. We made $19,000 in that 5-day period. And we kind of talked about that. So for a total of 31,126, or whatever that is. So I'm like, well, okay, that's got to be all the new people from the summit. It wasn't. That wasn't all it. There was people that had theoretically seen the email sequence a month earlier. And now they're like, Ray's a little more legit than I thought. I am in on this.
That's the punchline then. So, my take, like, I'm like, man, it was that bad where you were trying to figure out how to pay groceries, right? You sold the business. What kind of business did you have that was brick and mortar?
It was a real estate property management company.
Right. So you sold that, right? You're in real estate. You're familiar with how it goes, right? But you sold.
It brought in money every month. I'm
right?
like, I need to be out of this. Plus I wanted to focus on this, but yeah.
And then you're trusting people. They're telling you how to spend the money. You're trusting them because they've built the authority with you. You do what they say. Before you know it, you burn through majority, if not all of it. You're in survival mode with the last kringle that you have. You're making the decision from this or my mortgage. You go on, bet all on you on this. And then this, right, by the grace of everything around, whether you're spiritual or not, or your belief or intuition or, right, just good energy, everything happened because of the work and the consistency. And it sounds like the aha moment for you was, I need to be repurposing myself to my audience and let them know what I'm up to. And that 5-step, 5-email sequence was that aha moment where it sounds like, oh my gosh, they saw me the first time, they got to it, or they finally just got to it and saw me. And now I've compounded that to my list 5 different times. I got new people going in, and now it's paying off. Am I catching this right?
Yeah. And I probably didn't mention it, but the number one thing about summits is that email list. Right.
That's
you get all this other stuff, but that's the most important. So I do summits now where I'm like, they're like, we're making this. Is that good? I'm like, it's great, but I don't care. I want I'm here for the emails. But
pause there
because
real quick.
of that,
Emails.
that's what created this kind of self-contained audience, authority, the ability to write what I want every day. I share emails, I tell stories because of that. And now I think it's worth noting is that I don't do anything different now. I run summits, and the week after the summit, I run a webinar that shares how we might use the most popular one is like how to create an opt-in funnel in 20 minutes in Pubfunnels. I show people, and then I invite them to join Pubfunnels over the weekend. That's what I do.
But social media is it, right? So I'm posting on Instagram, I'm posting on TikTok, I'm posting 15 times a day, LinkedIn, I'm doing lives. Ray, what you're telling me is that I don't need to do all that. Am I wasting my time, or do I need to do that with email marketing? Like, what
If
is
you
the
love
secret
it,
sauce?
if you love it and you're good at it, great. But I can just tell you this from there's the other thing about summits is it gives you it's the old Warren Buffett quotes like when the tide goes out, you see who's skinny dipping, right?
Oh,
So if you meet me and you're like, I think Ray's got, he's got a great list, blah 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 blah, and I'm on your summit and I promote it and nothing happens, you're like, it's probably all talk, right? Same with when I run a summit, I can see the stats of everybody who's performing, and it's like, wow, that person acted like they were a big shot, and they don't. Their list is either they're lying about the size, or their people don't respond. This person, who's an up and coming person, or I thought was up and coming, is really a superstar, and so you start to see these. And after that first summit, I had one of the speakers came to me and said, yours was, he had just run his summit. He's like, yours was awesome. Can you run my next one? I said, sure, I guess. Let me think of a price, and then then I run his next one and he ran his again in my format 45 days after he ran his first summit was like a month before mine. 45 days after that, he runs it again and triples his sales. And I'm not saying it's all from me, but it was just like he had used some tool and it was horrible. And then he says a month or two later, he's like, you and I ought to go into business together and do done for you summits for people. I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'm not there. We're all sitting home. That was during the pandemic.
yes.
But back to your point is I do 100% of my sale. Now I've just, as we're recording this, I did 2 promotions, a well-known course guy and a well-known challenge person. They have courses, and I'm in the top leaderboards on both at the same time
Wow.
because, and that generates income for me. That's just sending some emails to my list. And
Wow.
so when you get that audience, there's so many things you can do. If you said, you know, Ray, we're going to give you another award tomorrow if you can sell, whatever 10 copies of this, I could do that because I could send an email, or I could say, and in fact, that's what I did do. That first anthology book on kind of on the way back, is I just said, I'm going to create this and send it to my list. And I've done a couple
Mm.
times where I was just like, you know what? I have this thing called a master kit. And it's like 9
Mhm.
courses about publishing and author. And it's not open all the time, but I just put it together, and I can usually make a quick $5,000 or $10,000 just by sending out the email. And that may
Mm.
sound like not much, or may sound like a lot. I don't know. I don't care. But to me, it was like, let's offer this over the weekend, and that's spending cash for whatever. Right. And so you can do, if you got to get a campaign going or whatever else, I just like send in an email. I did
So
one.
now we go the audience part, because I want to get to this part here, which is really what I feel a true author or somebody that's aspiring to be an author is really wanting to do. Right? Yes, there's private label rights, right? There's Chat GPT. There's all these different ways to attach yourself to the authority of a book, a magazine, an article of some sort, right? But let's just take it to somebody that really loves to write. They really enjoy the process, the customized stories, and this is their passion project, but now they're ready to monetize it. Let's say they've gone through some traumatic emergency, they want to tell the story. They successful business, they want to tell the story. Whatever it is, for gosh sakes, it could be just training a dog or a cat or whatever, pet. All they want to do is focus on what they love, which is telling the story and doing the writing for it. At what point does that truly become the sole focus if they've put together the information in what you're sharing? Like, are we missing something that we should be including, that if you do this, this, and this, you have a better chance of doing exactly what you enjoy doing versus trying to negotiate deals, sign up with a contract that's going to put you bankrupt before you even finish writing the book? Can you
Right.
go into that?
So I was on, it's been, I don't know, 8 months ago, I was on a summit, kind of a live cast thing about emails, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I haven't expressed it by now, I mean, the core of my business is email marketing.
Mhm.
I get the emails from summits. I build the authority from summits. I build the authority by having the books. I build authority
Mhm.
by having software, whatever. And I was on this. They were bringing me on. They're like, well, what's your thing? And I said, well, I'm just really, when I started being successful, it was when I just was became myself in my emails, right? Not trying to sell anything. I mean, I have links. Every email, there's a link to something, usually something to
Mhm.
buy. But
Got it.
that you don't have to read, you don't have to care about that to enjoy the email, right? So I look at it
Mm.
like almost like a daily periodical or newspaper, something like that. And I said, I booked the call and I was going to be scheduled for 3 weeks out. I'm like, I really need a name for this, but I just like entertaining. Well, the greatest showman's out and so forth. So I said, well, what I
That is, by the
teach,
way, my most favorite movie.
what I teach is the PT Barnum method. Yeah, one of mine too.
I love that movie. I
Yeah,
didn't
it
mean to throw
just
you off here, but
no,
I
no.
love this. I love the soundtrack. I, my daughter and I
Yep.
we watch. I really enjoy the storyline and the
And
perseverance and the energy.
I'm not even a musical guy in general, but yeah, like the Million Dreams song, and I just
Oh man,
we used to
sorry.
my daughter and I used to sing that on the way to uh, preschool
Yeah,
all the
mine.
time.
Me. I'm with you. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
Well,
right
I
ahead.
mean, yeah. So I mean, but that's I'm like, but that's what I. So how do I? It's actually a great example because to me, I started saying, let's just make this fun. And you were kind of commenting on my books and stuff. So I said, well, all I'm doing is really trying to entertain people. So we're going to call it the PT Barnum method. And then I said, I did the talk and I'm like, well, I need a book on this. Right. And so I created,
Yeah.
try to, and you shouldn't do this, but I like to play with my own covers. And I said, that's all right. It looks like an old, circus poster. And, so I did that and but I teach it what I'm doing. And really, this is like, shares a lot of my emails that are just stories
Wow.
and how I do it in the 3 E's: educate, entertain, and elevate, and so forth. And it really started crescendoing just recently because I said,
When did
we were
you write
talking.
that book?
I started it. It's in editing now, so this is kind of this is
Well,
the
when did the project start? Was this a 2 year ago project? Is this
no, just right when that it's like, what? I mean, there's not enough books on email, in my opinion, or at least for authors, right? So I said,
or and to your
and it's
point, books on like practical books, right? Like in our marketing space kind of books. I mean, you have emails for dummies and this and that and
yeah,
corporate style emails.
this is more of a book on like entertaining you, right? So I said, at the very least, I'm going to create this so I have a copy, and it's mostly my favorite emails in it that got the best responses, right? And I said, so it's almost, I would say it's 80% story and analogies and ways that I positioned an offer on the back end of a story. And then there's certain, technical like strategies and chapters in there. But
There
what
was another
happened?
book that you did
Yeah.
that you shared with me. You called it, I forgot, the ban.
Yeah. So at the same, as I was writing that, because here's what, by the way, the number one read emails on my list anyway, but I suspect this is across the board, are when somebody trolls you and then you're like, what the, that's just crazy. So I take I don't name the person, but I take their email and put it in an email and I explain, I got this today. Here's what they said. Here's why it's crazy. Here's what I did. And check out this link. That's kind of the email behind it. Well, I was doing that and I'm like, well, I sent an email. There's this old Chris Farley character from Saturday Night Live, Matt Foley. He was a motivational speaker, right? And he would always end every thought or sentence or episode with, if you don't listen to what I'm saying, you're going to end up in a van down by the river, just making fun of himself. And so I wrote an email one day. I got this crazy, actually I listed like 3 crazy ones because just whatever. Sometimes there's a full moon, right? And I said, that's going to be everybody loves these emails. what if I wrote a book about them? And then like at the end of each chapter, where there's probably each chapter is based on some crazy email type, then what if I just named it live? So I named the email living in a van down by the river instead of a van, right? And I create a little fancy little cover,
Oh, I
living in a van.
love it.
And so I'm like, this is my favorite book of all time. Now this is still in progress because I get new, it's like, okay, ready to go. And then I'll get some crazy thing. It's like, how can you and I were talking about this offline. I mean, I had somebody that was just wanted me on their summit and they were partnering with me. And then they sent me this email telling me to do all this work and transfer their account out of Pubfunnels and do all this stuff. And you let me know when it's done. It's like, whoa, what? I don't care if you leave, but I'm
Where did
not
this come
at your beck
from?
and call. And then I went on a webinar that day, and 12 hours later, it's like, what's the update on this? I'm like, you know
Oh
what?
my gosh.
I'm like, you just shot yourself in the foot. You had prior, but then it was just like 12 hours. Like I didn't respond for 12 hours because I'm just trying to like, you know, I wasn't, let me just have a 2-hour rule where I don't overreact in my response because this is just
I
so
agree.
audacious. And so, that's going to be a chapter, right? And then there's the people that are, I've got the ubus who are the offended on behalf of the people like, I did one where I'm like, I love Chinese food, except I'm hungry again in 2 hours. And somebody said I was offending Chinese people. I'm like, you gotta be kidding.
Ray, it sounds like you
But
are finally doing exactly what
it's,
you enjoy
it's,
doing.
I'm just re-emphasizing what you said because your point is like, I'm like, oh my God, this is my favorite book I've ever written.
How
And
many
I
books do you have?
guarantee
How many books do you have on the list?
that's the problem. Don't do what I do. Do what I say. Don't do what I do.
Uh,
Because then my number one skill is coming up with what would be a great book.
that's awesome, man.
But then I got to sit. So I've got like,
You're the perfect coach, man, for someone that really is looking for guidance and bringing out the best of somebody. Right? You've been there, done that, man. But I still want to know the number. So give me a roundabout.
well, I've got, let's say 6 I'm working on right now. So then the other thing comes
Wow.
out is I sent an email about, and I'm just sharing this because if you've got an idea that's helpful to people, just do it. So I decided I can just think of these. Now I've got them all started. And so it's like, oh my gosh, that idea is good for a chapter in this book. I go to that book, I add that chapter, I put some notes in there. Or here's a big secret is if I come up with an idea, for instance, talking about funnels. I like to describe funnels as like you go to a website. There's 2 ways I describe funnels. One is if you go to a website and you got to try to figure out how to navigate it to get the information you want, because, it's a really great, this seems really great, but I don't know where to start. That's like me giving you this book and I'm just like, here's all the pages and
Oh my
you
gosh.
figure out how to order it and so forth. A funnel is when I give you a book and a table of contents, I say you should read it in this order. If you create a funnel, you've thought through it. You're showing respect to your visitor. You're showing respect for yourself. If you do a site that's just kind of, maybe a few menus on there, but you still got to kind of go through, okay, I got to go through this menu. And then that drives me nuts. That's how I describe it in this book. And I'm like, well, I need a book on beginning, ideas like this. What's a funnel? What are short links? Well, it's just like call forwarding for websites, right? Automations,
I
all
never
those kind of
looked at it
things.
like that. I never
And,
looked.
and I'm like, well,
Call
how do I sit?
forwarding for websites. I love that. And these are practical things that if we can relate it to our day-to-day life, it's so much more easier to understand.
So I started taking that approach and I said, okay, but what? So there's this scene. This is how I do emails, by the way. I tell the story, right? So there's this scene in the first Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. At the end, he wants to put the idea in the world's head that he's a superhero. So how does he do it?
Mm.
By denying it. So he goes up and they say, hey, there's been a lot of speculation that I'm some kind of superhero. And they're like, one of the reporters like, we never said that. And he's like, but really, I'm not the superhero type. So he's now planted the idea by denying it. I'm like, God, how could I? That's such a cool line. How could I use that? So I created a
Yes.
book, my tech book. Instead of saying author tech made easy, it is, I am not Tony Stark, by Ray
Oh
Brehm.
my
And it's like,
goodness.
and so then, in fact, I may start putting in my bio. I didn't today, but it's like, he is sometimes called the Tony Stark of authors tech, right? Or he
I
denies that,
love the
or Ray denies that he
creativity.
is the Tony Stark of author tech. You deny it. But anyway, I said, well, this can work two ways. Because if my users are feel like, oh, I'm not techy enough, I can't get into Pubfunnels, I don't understand all this stuff. It's like, hey, if you're not Tony Stark, read this book. We're going to teach you in a simple method. Short links are like call forwarding for websites. You know, all this, we're going to put it in practical terms so you understand what they are. You don't have to know the code. You don't have to know the we talk about email inbox versus CRM marketing and so forth,
Yes.
and just try to simplify that. So we created a book, and I get to do a book that's, makes me seem like I'm Tony
Yeah,
Stark
man.
or Iron
You're
Man.
in your
How cool. It's
you're
so
in your
much fun.
zone. Yeah, and that's where we want to help people get to. Do exactly what they love to do. You've been generous with your time, right? And we're definitely going to pick up where we left off again. You're definitely a new friend that I want to stay in touch with, and I appreciate you just giving our audience just you as a human being, but also your years of experience. I know we're talking 25, 27 years. It's so hard to unpeel all of that, and you can't even put it into, cliff notes here, but you've given us inspiration, you've given us some action items, you've given us some things that are within reach that you don't have to be super smart or super creative. You just have to know how to use it. I know that you have, pub funnels. I know that you have the creation to monetization. I know you do many different things that are powered by your brain. But could you tell me a little bit about how, with the use of high level, like how do you find the time to even incorporate anything from what the platform offers to what you're doing magical wise with helping people and doing your writing?
Well, for one, the platform generates the ideas itself, right? So whether it's, hey, I need help with this technical piece, and it's not for everyone, but for me, I like to tinker. And
Mm,
so I've like this situation with this, high level pub funnels has helped me, one, stabilize my business, but two,
hmm
I used to feel guilty about that. Like, oh, I want to
mm,
play with this new tool. No, I really should be doing some kind of revenue generating activity. Well,
yes.
when you become part of the software, it's like the software is going to generate the revenue now. Yeah, I got to bring people in, but part of that revenue is dependent on me tinkering and learning new things, and for instance, putting our API calls into, so people can have direct sales from their site with their book. That's all
Mm,
good, and I get to help authors. It works out for me. And you and I had talked offline about this, but it's the ability now for me to be like, I was sitting here, or I go in my library and I start reading. It's okay for me to read now because I'm learning.
yes.
It's okay for me to take that course or enroll in this other course because it's all it's all synergistic. And but I'll get an idea, and like we were talking about a second ago, it's like, oh, for instance, I'll give you a sneak
Go
peek.
for
This
it.
is just a thought. There's this old Saturday Night Live skit, the Bye-Bye. Do you know this one?
I
Adam
don't, but
Sandler,
I'm listening.
David Spade and Helen Hunt's the guest on Saturday Night Live. They're these flight attendants, and the plane lands, and people are getting off, and they're like, "Hey, do you know where?" And they're like, "Bye bye," because they're just tired, they're worn out, and they're pushing people, and they're like, "Bye bye." And I'm like, that came into my head the other night, and I'm like, because I had somebody that was like, I can't remember. I get enough. Like, there's so many categories that for this book that fit in there. It's like, hey, I didn't get the free download from your summit. What is this? Some kind of bait and switch? And I'm like, bye bye. I don't know why anyone would do that, but whatever. But you're just there is no world where you'd be a fit. Now, for a lot of people that there are. For me, that's why for me, this book is important too, because it solidifies my own rules. Like, if you can't act like an adult, just
Yes.
tell me if you didn't get it. I can send it to you. But you're gonna be like, what is
Yes.
this? A bait and switch? It's like, yeah, bye bye. So they keep
Yes.
shuffling everybody off that skit. And I'm like, that's the perfect ending chapter. And it's a lesson, right? It's like, if you can get to this point where, and I had to do it. I left this part out of the story. I know we're going long and I'm all over the
I'm
place.
having and our audience is having fun too, right? You know, this is the magical part of these types of conversations. This is live, direct, uncut, direct with Ray Brehm. Like you can't get better than this, man.
I'll give you one more secret story because there's a ton. I mean, it's not like I can give away this book,
But with this last, let's finish on this chapter
yeah,
with the bye-bye.
yeah,
What
but
bring us home with it?
yeah. So it's just like, hey, don't waste your time on these people that will just cause you problems and are just you'll find out sooner or later. You might as well just find out sooner that they're always complaining.
Yes.
And oh, I might miss one sale here. I had somebody. It's like, what kind of racket is this? I can't log into the thing I bought, for $67 product. I'm like, I sent one word, refunded. And they're like, you gotta be kidding. And I'm like, bye-bye. Right. So but for me, this was like, this is my healing. It's okay to have rules that people.
It's not about the money with Ray. It's
right.
about the principle. Treat people with respect.
If you wouldn't accept that treatment of you for free, why would you allow someone to pay you to treat you bad? That's just my thing. And so the underlying rule in here is adults only, please. If you can't act like an adult, but this to me, and I've read some books and I've got some influencers in my life that, have inspired this. And it's like, you know what? It's okay to have standards. The customer's not always right. There's some people I follow that say they're always wrong, as a matter of fact. And I to me, it doesn't even matter. It's how they treat you.
You've been amazing. And just on that note, I want to give a little cliffhanger to our audience, right? How do they find you, Ray? I know we're going to put some information in the description, but what's the best way to get tuned into what Ray's has in his mind? Maybe they are interested in some of the coaching or the guidance or the positioning, or just to be a little nosy and see how you do it as inspiration. What's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I would just go to rayb.me. So type that in the browser.
rayb.me.
Okay. That's all. And that's my short link, call forwarding, or whatever. That's always going to point to the most important part. And perfect. I think, you just get on the email list and see what I'm doing. You don't have to respond. You don't have to do anything. Just watch, because that's what I do with all the people I follow. I just see what they're sending. And
that's amazing.
If the people that I'm entertained by, I stay on their lists.
Yes.
I don't have to buy every single day. I just like it's almost like getting the newspaper that you love that delivered to your door.
I enjoy horoscopes. I enjoy a good one-sheet email on some jokes, what's happening, some current affairs. I appreciate that. I subscribe to that, and that is a great way to share how you do it as well. Ray, you've been an amazing guest to have on, and I appreciate you unlocking, your strategy, your examples, your story, your personality. You're not the typical person that you meet and you spend an hour with on the side of at a holiday party, because everybody wants your attention, right? So I feel privileged to have you here. If you are tuning in and you just caught maybe the middle or the tail end of this, Ray is one of our SAS Gold Award winners, one of our Go High Level users. He publishes books. He helps authors monetize. He's a funny, awesome gentleman to have in your network. And if you are interested in leveling up your experience with High Level, we have some links below to get in there to learn more, so you can put yourself in rooms with gentlemen like Ray that are in our ecosystem. Ray, without any further ado, man, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Your energy is infectious. You've built so much knowledge in me here that if somebody were to ask me anything about authorship, I'd say, I know a guy, but here's something you should start doing. And I appreciate you for that. To our audience, thank you for your time. We will have more episodes coming. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.